Welcome to Section 3 of the Minimum Holistic Goal Setting course. To quickly recap what we've done thus far, in Section 1, you developed a clear understanding of who the primary decision makers are, what powers of decision they have, and what types of decisions they are responsible for, and how you will handle disagreement in a timely yet effective way. You also assess the resource base available to you and your homestead endeavor. In Section 2, you created a powerful quality of life statement that describes how you want to live your life in alignment with what you value most. It should be co-owned by at least all of the primary decision makers, and more than anything, it should get you fired up when you read it aloud. With the first two sections complete, you're ready for this third section of your MHG, where you will describe the things that you have to produce in order to meet your quality of life needs. This will naturally come to describe what you have to produce in order to effectively manage the growth and development of your homestead. You will also describe the state of your resource base that is required to maintain those forms of production in both the near and long-term future. In order for your homestead to meet your needs for living your desired quality of life, it must be profitable. The systems you grow and construct and the actions you perform in managing them need to generate a yield, some form of surplus energy above and beyond the cost of maintaining, feeding, and ultimately replacing the system. That is your profit. There needs to be energy returned for energy invested, and this should go without saying, but I'm being explicit here, this energetic exchange must be sustainable. This means that you feed the thing that feeds you, and you are fed enough by it to continue doing so, and vice versa. All participants win. It's a win-win exchange. The energy exchange has to be reciprocal. If not, the system, whether it be your chicken flock or your homestead as a whole, is destined to fail, usually either due to a broken ecology or a burnt-out human, or more typically both. This is ultimately what the success of your homestead really comes down to: managing energy. For what you put in, do you get enough back to thrive? Will your homestead be a system of systems that the future generations that inherit it from you will take care of and build upon, or will they scrap it for parts because it's more trouble than it's worth? You get to decide. So, where does that leave us with meeting your quality of life needs? Each of the needs or desires expressed in your quality of life statement will need to be met by some form of production. Now, let's clarify the form of production part. It doesn't need to be a physical thing per se. For example, if one of your desires is to start each day grateful and energized, then you might need to produce a healthy balance between your work and personal life, or perhaps a family culture built upon gratitude and living in sync with natural rhythms. Whatever it is will be unique to you, your context, and your place, which is why only you can determine what those essential forms of production must be. Here's another example. If one of your desires is for financial security, that could be met by producing a retirement or pension plan, or an estate plan that ensures an orderly transfer of assets to your children and adequate income for you. Hopefully you're starting to get the picture here. The thing you produce won't necessarily be a physical product, but it will certainly impact how you manage your homestead and the physical things that it is comprised of and that it produces. So here's your action step. Ask yourself the following question. What don't we have now, or what aren't we doing now, that is preventing us from achieving this? In this case, this is your desired quality of life. Rephrase your answers in the positive to this question, and you'll know what you have to produce. The question is deliberately framed in the negative, what I don't have, what I'm not doing, because these are often easier to answer than trying to identify that single missing kernel. However, once you've got the list of what you don't have and what you aren't doing, reframe those answers in the positive form so that you have a list of things that you must do and things you must create in order to achieve your quality of life goals. If any of your desires will require money to produce, to be debt-free, for instance, or to be financially secure, then profit from whatever sources you specify will need to be a form of production as well. Remember, you want to keep this high level. Don't get mired in the weeds of how you're going to produce. If you've got a farm, simply profit from crops or profit from livestock will suffice. If you have an investment portfolio, say profit from investments. The exact how, which crop you'll grow, which breed of sheep you'll raise, which investment vehicle you'll choose, those are decisions that you need to test, and for that, you need to complete MHG. Here's the best way to methodically work through this step. First, take your quality of life statement, and for each of the needs expressed within it, make sure there's at least one form of production that meets it. And remember that one form of production can provide for multiple quality of life criteria. Second, you'll want to double check that you've included what you need to produce to achieve your stated purpose. Third, you'll want to avoid any how-tos. So focus on what you need to produce, not how it is to be produced. Remember, how-tos require testing, and we're not there yet because we're not done with the MHG. And finally, fourth, you want to check for any conflicts that may have arisen between primary decision makers or the larger group. If so, it's probably because you were beginning to discuss a how-to and had gotten away from simply listing what. This is how it might look. On the left, you have a list of all the various needs expressed in your quality of life statement, and on the right is a list of all the things you will have to produce in order to meet those needs. Once you have a complete list, then you can expand upon them and flesh them out in complete sentences. Here are two more examples of a completed forms of production statement. And again, these are included in the PDF MHG creation guide that you downloaded with this course if you want to reference them offline. If not, go ahead and pause the video here to finish reading them. Okay, let's get on to part 2, the last part of creating your MHG, where you will describe the future state of your resource base as it must be in order to sustain the forms of production that provide for your desired quality of life. So all homestead production is predicated on the overall health and well-being of the ecology of which it is a part. This includes what we typically think of as ecosystems: forest, meadows, prairies, creeks, lakes, oceans, as well as human ecologies, networks of relationship, local support groups, commerce networks, friends and family, etc. A healthy natural system will not remain so without a healthy, responsible, just, and peaceful human culture to tend it. This is equally true the other way around. A healthy, responsible, just, and peaceful human culture cannot exist when the land is degraded and destroyed. These things are inseparable. They are mutually dependent on one another, and the pattern holds whether we are referring to the nation-state scale or your own individual homestead. Your desired quality of life is held by both of these forces of nature: an intact, healthy ecology and an intact, healthy human culture. For this reason, you need to pay conscious attention to how what you create and how you live influences the direction that both of these go. What we're fundamentally talking about here is legacy. What are you putting in place by your efforts today that will make life better for people you will never know but already love? If you could meet your great-great-grandchildren, would you want to be able to sit with them underneath trees that you plant this year? Trees that shelter them, feed them, and provide a livelihood for them? How would you feel knowing that the homestead you designed and started creating way before their time is still providing for them so many years in the future? How would you feel if they could say, "Thank you for this. Let me show what we've done with it"? And perhaps more than anything, what would you want to be able to tell them when they ask you, "When did you know? And what did you do about it?" So let's take a step at answering that future great-grandchild's question. I want you to describe the state of your future resource base as it must be many years from now if it is to sustain the production you require in order to provide for the quality of life that you want. To do this, you will need to frame your description in terms of 3 things: the land, the people you live with, work with, and depend upon, and the community that you want to live in. Let's look at each of those individually. First, the land. This includes both the land you live on that is under your management and care and the larger watershed or bioregion in which your property is located. Ask yourself, what is the state of the land under management within the defined whole? In this case, the defined whole is your homestead and its surrounds, in 100 years to ensure the continued necessary production. The word land here is big tent. We're really referring to all of the living creatures and systems that together create a functional ecology: soil, fungi, plants, animals, insects, forests, lakes, streams, oceans, etc. It can be helpful to think of the 4 ecosystem cycles in your description. These are the water cycle, which is how water moves through your landscape and how your landscape receives, retains, and then releases that water towards productive, life-giving ends. Community dynamics, which is the web of relationships amongst all living organisms within your landscape. The mineral cycle, which is how nutrients and minerals are cycled within your landscape. And then finally, energy flow, which is how much solar energy your landscape is capturing and converting into biomass. This is the foundational energetic input for all living systems. Here's an example of what a description of your land base might sound like. Remember, these examples are included in the PDF, so go ahead and pause the video here if you want to read it or reference that offline. Okay, next up, the people. People are the X factor, especially when it comes to designing and building for the long term. The question to ask yourself is, how must we and our enterprises be far into the future for the people we rely upon to remain loyal, respectful, supportive, and engaged? These people can include clients, vendors, suppliers, members, advisors, extended family, neighbors, environmental groups, regulators, and yes, government representatives. Anyone that will somehow be touched by or be interacting with you, your homestead, your forms of production, and your enterprises. Now, it's not very possible to describe such a set of people 100 years in the future with any accuracy. What we want to do is describe that which is under our control, which is how we show up for our community, the values we choose to live by, the way that we choose to conduct ourselves in business. These things taken all together are the signal, the vibration that we send out into the world. And if we tune that signal with conscious intent, it will attract the right kind of people to us and our endeavors. Here's an example of what a description of the people might look like. Go ahead and pause it here if you like, or reference the MHG creation guide. The final part of describing your future resource base is to describe the community you want to live in. This is going to include things like cultural attitudes and amenities, belief systems, public services, and even utilities. So ask yourself, what services and cultural amenities and values will your community need to have available to sustain what you produce? Go ahead and actually list them out. How do you want your community to look, feel, act, and be? Remember that many of your future resources may be derived from this community, and what you produce may depend upon them being available. Although many of the decisions you will make will not have a direct bearing on the future of your community, many will indirectly, and cumulatively they will all be felt. So don't underestimate your power as an individual person or business to generate change. Even if your community is not what it needs to be right now, you can begin making decisions that move it towards being a place that is prosperous, peaceful, and culturally rich. Here's an example of what a description of the community you want to live in might sound like. Go ahead and pause it here if you want to read more or reference the creation guide. If you've been writing as you go, now is your opportunity to refine what you've written. I'd recommend that you do this organically. Let it come to you instead of forcing or chasing it. If you've written everything down, then it's okay to walk away and let your subconscious chew over everything you've just written for a while. In fact, that's the very first step I'd recommend you take if you've just completed writing all of the sections. Take a break. Walk away for at least 24 hours. Everything will still be here waiting for you. I can all but guarantee that after a good night's sleep and a fresh day's perspective, you'll catch things you missed as well as identify things you can remove or change to better communicate the essence of what you were trying to say. Always remember, keep it simple. Don't be tempted to start adding too many sentences. In general, the polishing process should shorten things, make them more concise and clear, so don't let those details creep in. Also remember that writing your MHG isn't about figuring out the how you're going to do it all right now. Having a complete MHG and then leveraging it into your decision making with the 7 decision tests that we're going to cover in the next video, that is how you're going to help determine the right how, who, where, and what when the time arrives to begin testing your decisions as you design and grow your homestead. The reason this will work is because you'll be crystal clear on your big why. So take your time to polish up your MHG, go back and review any of the videos as necessary, take some space from it and come back. I guarantee it will instantly unlock things. Once you've got at least a completed draft of your MHG, you're ready for the next video, where we dive into using your MHG to actually test your decisions. This is where the real power is. That's all for this section. Happy writing. I'll see you in the next video where we will dive into the 7 decision tests for actually using your minimum holistic goal in everyday life.